this marks the auspicious beginning of the 9th edition of the Spiritz Conclave and Achievers Awards 2022. I would request our dignitaries to please light the ceremonial lamp as we get the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, in this auspicious day, I request the dignitaries to please light the ceremonial lamp, seek the blessings of Lord as we move from darkness to light, from agony to knowledge, and from well, we pray to God, we seek the blessings of Lord to move from agony to knowledge, from happiness, from ignorance to happiness, and from darkness to light. I would request our dignitaries to please light the ceremonial lamp. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's have a huge round of applause for the auspicious beginning. Well, I would now request our dignitaries to please gather near the lamp for a group picture. This is a very proud moment for all of us, so let's request our dignitaries to please gather for a group picture near the lamp. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen. I would request all of you to be seated. Thank you so much. I would request all of you to please be seated, and let's now officially start this day with one more round of applause for the wonderful beginnings. Let's hear it for Spiritz Achievers Awards and Spiritz Conclave 2022. Well, it is now time to start with the first panel discussion of the day, and just as every industry has its challenges and worries, alcobev sector is no different. So our first panel is going to deliberate upon key worries for alcobev companies despite volume gains. So I would now invite on stage the moderator for the session, Mr. Bikram Basu, Vice President, Marketing Strategy and Business Development, Allied Blenders and Distillers Private Limited. Well, he brings with himself a rich experience in the spirits industry across leading organizations, which include 6 years with United Spirits, 14 years with Pernod Ricard India, and 6 years with ABD. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for Mr. Bikram Basu, our moderator for the first session. I would now invite the panelists on the stage, Mr. Satpal Chaudhry. He is an industry veteran with over 4 decades of experience. He has a good academic record which reflects in his 2 MTech degrees completed from Delhi IIT. He had served reputed companies like Mohan, UV Group and Chevrolet. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us here. I would now welcome to the panel Mr. Pradeep Gidwani, entrepreneur and consultant. Well, he's a startup specialist. He was ranked by Business Today as one of India's hottest young executives in its first ever listing of 25 India's INC Rising Stars. Thank you so much, Mr. Gidwani, for joining us here. And to join us in the panel, can I now call on stage Mr. Ashwin Balivada, Executive Director, Cheers Group. He's an Executive Director at Cheers Group, where he leads the strategy, sales and marketing for the group. He's instrumental in successful brand launches and sales execution across premium and super premium segments, including the super successful blockbuster brand Labrador Blended Scotch Whisky. And last but not the least, to join us in the panel, can I now invite on stage Mr. Ashutosh Mohan Rastogi, co-founder of Amicus Advocates and Solicitors. He's a tax lawyer and co-founder of Amicus Advocates and Solicitors with more than 17 years of experience in tax and transfer pricing litigation, consulting and advisory services. Ladies and gentlemen, this completes the wonderful panel, and we're all set to talk about key worries for alcobev companies despite volume gains. So let's hear it for the panel as I now give it up, and it is now over to the moderator. Let's have a huge round of applause for the panel. Mr. Basu, over to you.
So thank you and welcome to the Spiritz Conclave, the ThinkPad sessions. I'm going to moderate the first session, and I've got a mic. So moderate the first session, and the topic is really interesting because it's something which all of us in business look at in terms of be it a huge, large, small, or a startup business, because that's something which forms the backbone of building the brands in the market. While all of us talk about brands being the center of the universe and consumers being at the center of the universe, we really need to look at costs and how to deliver on those costs. So the opening session is on the key worries for the alcobev makers despite volume gains. And just to put a bit of perspective for a lot of the young audience, the alcobev industry, or what we call the IMFL industry, including the scotches, would have been around 350 million cases pre-COVID. It went down to around 310 million cases during COVID, but last year bounced back to around 353 million. So the industry came back to what it was. I'm talking about spirits. I'll come to beer and country liquor after that. And this year it seems to be closing around 375 million cases. So that's a lot of spirits which we are talking about. The beer industry with Satpal Chaudhry ji. He's the CEO of chaudhry India, has been around in the industry for a long, long time, and quite a few of us look up to him in terms of his guidance. So what we'll do is we'll go to each person and let them have their opening comments, and then we'll get into a softer discussion as to what it is. So,
I think the best is let my boys speak something. I'll sum up nicely for you people.
okay. So, so you want the other panelists to speak first?
If you want me to start, I can start. But the question is that if they speak something now, I'll give you a great idea at the end of the time.
Okay, fine
We'll
with
sum
that.
up everything for you. With my experience of 51 years in the liquor industry, how we start, how we end, where we are, how we are going on. If I start that, then there's nothing left. So I will request to start from here. So let's listen them, then I will sum up with all.
Okay.
Can you reframe the question?
The question is essentially, what are the key worries for the alcobev makers despite volume gains? So what are the worries? Is it inflation? Is it regulation? Is it inflation? Is it regulation? Is it frequent changes in policy? Is it us as an industry not moving prices? So what are the key worries?
I think it's continuity. What's there today is not there tomorrow. Delhi is the biggest example. makers of the policy are not sure what they want. That's the most important worry we have today. Because what happened in Delhi is a very, very big example. Yesterday I got into Delhi after a year and I had to wait for 20 minutes to get a bottle of beer. And that too, it was not chilled. And that too, it was a product that I didn't know. I was just, this is what we have. You want it, take it, leave it. So I came last year, I had huge options. So it's the continuity that is important. And I think to a large extent we should blame ourselves and not the government or anybody else, because we don't put any kind of pressure or any kind of conditions from our side. Like for example, in the southern state, where I think you guys are market leaders in Hyderabad state,
Yeah,
Telangana.
that's right,
I think the payments were coming late, brief period of time, at least for us, the higher end products. So we stopped supply. And then the payments came on time. Because the state was unable to give salaries for some time. So it's this kind of conditions that we'll have to put. It's then only we can also try and innovate and do other things. And not just like, oh, I can't manufacture malt today because next year I don't know if my brand will be registered or not. What am I going to do with the spirit that's being matured? So in my opinion, the first thing is we have to look for a model. If governments can be elected for 5 years, our policies also can remain unchanged for 5 years, at least 3 years. Yeah.
Yeah, I fully agree with you that frequent policy change, sporadic and random policy changes, that certainly hits on the survival of the company. And since, to my mind, obviously, because I'm from the tax side, so I have seen my clients who are in liquor, and recently we saw example of Pernod, being handed out a plus $200 million customs demand notice. So when things like these happen, it shakes up the confidence of the players in the industry. What is the government trying to do? What is the policy laid out? I mean, are we saying that the companies in liquor industry are not really tax compliant? They are having huge turnover, and I'm sure they have staff, they have consultants to look into this. Then how come these obnoxious demand notices are coming out? Where is the problem? Is it the psychology of the tax department that we have to get after liquor industry? These guys are the ones who are making money. And then, what is the defense? So, of course, that is post facto when a demand notice comes out. But at the supply chain level itself, because of our very haphazard and scattered, tax structure, which is not GST integrated, differential taxation for different states, interstate taxation, all of this is such a mess today, which I feel every liquor player has to deal with. That, this is certainly, I think it figures in the top 5 worries, for any liquor company, if probably not the topmost. So this is something which the policymakers should also address. When they got in GST, the idea was that it would be seamless, right? Slowly and gradually, all players would be co-opted. But we really need that to happen for the liquor industry because there's wastage of input tax credit. There is excessive planning around navigating through different states. Creating supply structures which will be VAT compatible, excise duty compatible. So all this really needs to be streamlined if we want to give some competitive edge, to our domestic players.
No, so I think some interesting points been made. I do a lot of work with startups. And therefore, a lot of my background is really, so I've worked with big companies and I've now worked with startups. And we're really going to talk about, from a startup perspective and from a young India perspective, what are the big challenges that we face here. I think one, of course, is really rising prices of input raw materials, right? And that's something which is affecting everybody across the globe, right? So prices have gone up over the years. We know that the geopolitical situation, we've had issues with availability of stuff, etc. That's pushed prices up extensively. And on the other side, we don't get price increases from state governments, and therefore squeezing margins for manufacturers. I don't understand why our industry should be regulated from a pricing perspective. Yeah. So I think to me that's one big challenge. And as manufacturers, we have to recalibrate ourselves here. But I think the biggest challenge to me, and I've now been in this industry for about 30 odd years, is this entire regulated environment, right? We're moving forward. We've implemented GST. It's gone through its teething problems. And we have one nation, one tax here. Our industry, we have taxes across different states here. We have different distribution networks here, right? Why is that? Ashwin talked about a very relevant point. If a government is elected for 5 years, why should the excise policy be changed every year, right? Every year, we have to go through the same process, the same pain, and the same bureaucracy of label registration, which can take 2 months, 3 months. Every year, we have to go through the process of opening new bonded warehouses because policies have changed. I look at what's happened in Delhi in the last 12 months here. We've gone through 3 different changes here. I mean, how can one plan? How can one have continuity? It's ridiculous here. Look at it from a startup's perspective, right? We're talking about Make in India. We're talking about startups from India going overseas. And what do we do to startups? We have label registration fee in Delhi of 15 lakhs of rupees per label of beer. I mean, if I'm a startup and I'm launching 3 variants of beer, that's 45 lakhs up front there. That's ridiculous. I don't understand this concept of high brand registration fees. I don't understand the concept of brand registration every year. Right, fine, I understand it because you've got different states, labels have to be registered. Do it once, and unless there's a change in it, don't ask for label registrations again and again and again. Price regulation. If there is an increase in input cost, why can't I increase my prices? How do you expect me to support my own industry if the government is increasing minimum wages, if the government is increasing electricity costs, if the government increases diesel costs and fuel costs? How can the industry survive here? How is it possible? Why must you regulate pricing? Why can't pricing be free across other industries? If I'm a fool to price my beer at 500 rupees a bottle, I mean, consumers not going to buy it there. So I'm a businessman. I will price myself as per what I need. I might choose to be in the niche segment, so be it. That's my choice. That's my choice, as long as I'm paying the requisite excise duty. So just in a nutshell, I think 1, rising prices, but 2, this over-regulation year on year on year is just killing this industry. Our growth today is forecast for economy at 7% despite all the entire geopolitical situation. 7% growth is happening in the Indian economy. Why can't our industry grow on a regular basis on that basis? It can only grow if these regulations are streamlined here.
Mr. Gidwani has taken up all the points which needs to be covered in this session. My point is a little different. Is anybody happy in the liquor industry today? Very first question. People are running the liquor industries. Are they really happy? No. I have seen India in very different perspective. I'm talking about 71 when we were liquor industry, and now it's 2022 liquor industry. The change is so much, you can't imagine even what has happened. During 80s, or less than 80s, we never used to run after the excise commissioners to get our cost cards. I never heard it, right? We have to get the cost card approved by the excise commissioner. Who does do it? How he knows what is the cost card? When he does not know my inputs, what is the cost of my inputs, how would he have concerned with my cost cards? Who is the excise commissioner to handle my EDP? Believable. These things have never happened earlier. Mr. Diwan is sitting in front of me. When he was putting a huge brewery in Rajasthan He was so excited, I can't imagine it. Today, see his position. Because of the wrong policy of the Rajasthan government, he had to move from there to Jammu. His brewery, he has spent huge money, crores of rupees, lost a lot of money on that, and I know everything about him. Where is that? He should have been growing by 10% by now. We are basically, there is no system in the liquor industry left now. What is talking about the brand registration? Why do you require it? Is India name is changed every day? Is there one? If Tata Tea is one, who goes to talk to him that Tata Tea is to change next day, another registration required? No. He got once labor register, once everything. It's going on. It's your choice whether you want to change your name or not. You want to put your inputs. They are asking us, we can't give price increase. Who are you? My money, my bottles, my spirit, I have to sell it, my people. How come you come to the picture? How the commissioner come to the picture? And he knows zero. Every third day, third month, the commissioner gets changed from eyes of they know nothing. And they think that we know everything. There is basically no balance left in the liquor industry. What we are putting, what we are getting. I heard the volume is increasing, but where? Ask the people. Today, bottle cost is almost 20-21 rupees per bottle. Your ENA is touching a 68-70 rupees per liter. And the commissioner says, I won't give you price increase. And still, our people are running the factories. The volumes which are going up is not what you are looking for. The middle brands are not growing. Either some rich people or the people which are crazed for the higher end whiskies, they're maybe growing higher because the base is small. I don't say they're growing much. Because the base is small, it looks that they're growing. If the growth is going on, that is because of lower segments. Where say 750 EDP, 700 EDP, 800 EDP, that is a brand which is growing basically. That too, if you ask the manufacturers, the fact is they make hardly any money because they try to make the volume so that they can get some money out of it. There's no money left in the liquor business as this year. The premium brands, I do agree, they have a good ADP, but the volumes are small, but the return to the company is quite good. But then the volume is not that much. We have to now decide what to do, how to fund the government. Government is playing double role, in my opinion. They want money on one side. Every year the excise duty gets increased. Whatever they want to, they do it. They don't ask you. There was a time, 70s, when I was in UP in Mohan, the excise commissioner used to ask us, what do you want? Today, who bothers it? I used to go to excise commissioner's office in Allahabad. But now what happens? Nothing. Now they dictate their terms without knowing what they're doing it. They do not even understand what troubles we are facing by buying the raw materials, packaging materials, the labor cost, administrative cost. They not bother at all. No, we won't give you price increase. Up to you whether you run it or not run it. The where we stand then. You ask the manufacturers, you ask the marketing people, so much cost going on, but where is the return out of it? Nothing. People are, because they have put a lot of money, they have put the factories, the people are working there, labor is there, they don't want to get out from there. But you ask me, today there is no love and enjoyment to run a liquor industry. I don't know whether how many will agree with me. There was a time you had some money, you enjoy the money. Yes, you are getting it. Today you are running paisa by paisa. This is my bottle cost, this is my this cost, another, this is the cost, and I'm getting from commissioner this guy. He doesn't want to increase my cost at all. Then okay, I remove the monocarton, I remove this thing, where we are?
So just to step in on one point of what Mr. Chaudhry is saying, you know, there are several data points and it may be off by 1% or 1.5%. But for the produce that we do today in India, out of 100 rupees, 67 rupees goes in duties, taxes, and all sorts of taxes. 67%, if not 68. So the companies producing the brands, what goes into it, the margins, everything. Margins to trade, margins to retail, cost of label, bottle, freight, transportation, everything has to happen in that balance 32 rupees. Now, that is the challenge. It will differ from segment to segment marginally. So that's something obviously everyone is talking about in terms of unable to passing on the cost push to the consumer. What Mr. Gidwani spoke about, what Satpalji spoke about is that, you know, we should have free pricing. What does the government have to do as long as the revenues are guarded and they're happy with the certain growth? We are happy as an industry to ensure that it's a win-win. We can work together with governments to see that their revenue growth is assured and the companies also gain simultaneously. It can't be a win-lose, because at a stage where it's win-lose, then it starts to crack. Either you start giving material which is not up to the mark, or you just say that this business is not for me, but you've got huge investments on the back end which you need to manage. Also, we do, as an industry, support millions and millions of farmers and a lot of employment as well, both direct and indirect. So at least my point of view would be that, you know, the government needs to understand this and can't have so many controls at every stage, be it what was mentioned as policy interventions which don't really make sense, like what Delhi had. And I was just conversing with Mr. Gidwani prior to the session, and, you know, startups have lost so much money in the Delhi business. And you come in with a dream and you don't know what to do and how to navigate that. And no other business is like that, where, sorry, where external factors determine how you do so much. Some of the bigger brands and bigger companies do have the ability to absorb disruptions like this, but they too hurt, because they have a portfolio of 20 to 30 brands. They too hurt with some with several variants. So the other points, everything has actually been made. So in terms of key worries, despite volume gains, one point I wanted to add, despite we as an industry also need to be a bit more proactive. While almost 70% of the markets are corporation markets, it's not that all corporation markets don't allow you a price increase. There are some markets which have a price regulation, and you've got to make representations, and they give you a price increase 3, 4, 5 years hence. Okay, so there are markets like that, but there are markets which allow you for price increase, like Karnataka or stuff like that. You just have to move the slab and have the confidence in your brands that the consumer will move. Because like we've seen, it's almost, it's an FMCG. It's just that the trade is regulated to 95,000 outlets in the country. So we can move pricing, but where we can move pricing as an industry, we don't choose to move pricing for that same level of the volume. Maharashtra, we can move pricing. We don't. Goa, we can move pricing. We don't. I'm talking about the bigger states. UP, we can move pricing. We don't. So while talking about government interference, we also need to look inward. So what are all that volume cases coming at in terms of cost? What it does is leave most of the markets with a handful of 5 or 6 companies. Okay, is that good for business? Is that good for startups? Is that good for innovation? Is that good for anything? Because what happens is that then there are companies which are coming craft or niche at the top level. But the problem they'll face with this industry And there are people who are facing is when you scale it up. Because you have to invest in the business to scale it up as you go to markets. 15 lakhs per label in Delhi. So how do you invest and how do you go forward? Because that's just the start. That's to say I have the ability to sell in the market. Okay. So how do you go beyond a Goa? How do you go behind a Bombay and then move to the rest of the country? Those are challenges that we need to work through, and they are real worries which we have. So again, we'll just go through for closing comments. He's an expert on transfer pricing actually, and he took up the Pernod case. But just to go through the comments again, we've talked about rising costs, be it raw materials, packaging material, minimum wages, labor cost, transportation, freight, diesel cost was touched upon, logistics. We've spoken about pricing freedom from Pradeep. We've spoken about frequent changes in policy and label. Both of you raised this topic. I've spoken about us not moving pricing the way we should. I was in the Haryana market yesterday. A bottle of Red Label or Ballantine's costs lesser than a 14-inch pizza, 10-crust pizza. Who's to blame for that? What's my billing price to trade? This despite 150% BCD, and we are all so subsumed with BCD. So there are things which we can look at ourselves and see how to play it forward. Closing comments from everyone, and then we'll call it a wrap. Starting with you.
Yeah, I had put up some slides on pricing,
I
more
did
on a
not know about
cross-border
that.
setting. Do we have time for that?
Yeah, we have time.
So there are a few slides I'd drawn up.
Anybody else with a presentation? Sorry, I did not check. Okay, fine.
Okay, so it's going to be put up. So where will it come? So
I'll put a check.
put it up. With this green button, I should just.
देखते कहाँ आता है बीच में आएगा।
So, so when I was contacted by Shalini for today's session, and she said that the topic is pricing. I'm a tax person, and obviously I'm looking at the supply side. There are taxes at the retail end, at the demand side. Then there are also taxes at the supply side. So, and we have some clients, liquor clients, and I know what on the tax side are their worries day in, day out. And recently, we're all aware, we had this, big brand being targeted by customs authorities with a more than $200 million notice. So when I was just thinking about what to speak on, I thought that I will just give the audience a perspective of what it is like to set the price in a related party scenario. So, because that is when you control the price, you are one group, whether you are selling to your subsidiary, you're deciding the price, whether you're buying from your subsidiary in a cross-border setting, you are deciding the price. So what kind of scenarios pop up there? What should be your key concerns? How you should document? I thought I'll just run around that a little bit. So as you can see, there have been recently a lot of news items in news on the pricing. So Pernod was, it was alleged that they were undervaluing their imports. There's price control also. So all that we've already talked about. So just, news clippings. So just coming straight to the point. So, pricing when you are importing anything in India for goods is a tricky issue because there are two conflicting regulations that you need to reconcile. So when you import, it is an expense. So your profit goes down. So at the profit side, it is income tax department which is thrusting the transfer pricing regulations. So whenever in a related party setting, you are incurring an expense which is impacting your profit. the Indian transfer pricing regulations say that you must have a certain threshold profit which matches with your peers in the industry. If you're making too low profit or you're in a loss, then that is where they are going to raise eyebrows, okay? But at the same time, if you're setting a price which is too low, then there are customs regulations also. It's a commodity that you're importing, so you pay BCD, all these duties on there. So then you end up annoying the customs authorities. So when you are importing in the liquor industry, dealing with your related parties, so you have to make sure that you are setting a price which pleases both, right? So that is the challenge. So the question is there a middle path to this? That how do we set a pricing? We are able to reconcile conflicting ends. So I thought I'll just touch upon that briefly with some examples, case studies. So the upshot of this is that yes, there is a way that you can address this pricing, gap, and the main the challenge at that time is that you have to plan thoroughly in advance before you undertake the transaction. Not that you've undertaken the transaction and then at the time of the company's tax return to be filed, your consultant wakes up and he says, we have to file this Form 3CB for transfer pricing, which says that your pricing has been at market rate. But we are not really at market rate. I don't know. We were just importing on an ad hoc basis or selling on a, the prices were set just based on historical understanding. So that should be avoided. You need to consciously plan. And there are databases available for customs also and for transfer pricing also, which help you get the right price. So if you are following that procedure, then more likely than not, you will come out clean later on, even if there's an investigation. Most of the people here are not really tax experts, but people from industry. But I will still take you through methods in brief, by and large, the common methods which are used to determine pricing. Whenever let's say we are importing scotch, right, which is used for blending and all, and there are a lot of players in the industry, then they are selling it in a branded, with the brand. So how do you, and the customs guy is telling you that, no, you need to increase the price, right? So he's going to ask you that, okay, you prove it to me that your price is fair. So how are you going to prove it? So by and large, whether it's for customs or whether it's for income tax transfer pricing, we have three methods. So they're just named differently, in between the two regulations, whether it's customs or income tax. So one is the method which is the comparable uncontrolled price method. In layman terms, you are just comparing price with price. So you have scotch being imported, similar quantity, similar quality, from a third party player. And you have pricing for that, then you can compare. And you can say, look, I fall within the range, so my price is fair. And this is transaction value method under customs. I have applied that, and you get the clean chit from the customs authorities. In another scenario, if you don't have a comparable transaction, then you work backwards. You either work backwards on the import price from the sale price, or you compute that price from the cost of production. Okay, so you need to have all of this data and you need to do that working. The other two methods, which is the deductive value and the computed value method, called so in customs, their counterparts, resale price method and cost plus method in transfer pricing. So these are less commonly used because there is constraint of data. But nonetheless, whenever, on a huge scale, you're doing an operation like this, you're importing from UK, scotch from UK or whatever, the main point is you need to get your planning done. That what is going to be my pricing? Am I going to satisfy one or more of these methods? Need to keep that documentation with you so that tomorrow, if income tax authorities or customs authorities challenge, you are able to answer. I'll just quickly, go through two case studies which we put up based on experience. So we had this client, again, from the liquor industry only, and they are importing scotch and they're selling branded scotch in India. So the raw material, the scotch raw material comes from UK. And they, after distributing in India for quite some time, they wanted to do, they have a different model, agency model as well. So when you actually buy, sell, that's your typical distribution model. But when you are just letting the overseas company sell directly in India and you are acting just as an agent, then the pricing changes. The agent will only get a commission for the sales which he helps make in India. Whereas when you're a distributor, you will retain a gross profit margin so that it recovers for you not only your expenses, but also gives you some net profit. But in both the scenario, you are helping the overseas company make a sale in India. Now, why you would want to go for an agency model is just sometimes you need to be more competitive in your pricing. And you have a lot of Indian clients, the company, the liquor manufacturer or the distributor. The request may be coming in for clients that we need to buy directly from UK, for example. Okay, and you don't want to lose that customer, so you are like, okay, I'll connect you directly with the UK company. And then you can buy at a cheaper price from them. And, internally, I will get a commission since I've got this client for you. So both these models we found they have successfully worked for a number of companies. A concern came from clients saying was that on pricing, at the distribution, when I'm importing, my price for Scotch is higher, for the Indian company. But when I'm acting as an agent and there's a direct sale happening from UK to end customer, the price is lower. So won't the customs authorities catch hold of me there? They will say that the same product is coming at different prices. So is that not an issue? So, as a transfer pricing expert, I know that, you see, the models are entirely different. In one scenario, you are acting as a distributor. In another scenario, you're acting as an agent. So obviously, when you are acting as a distributor, whatever imports you're going to make as a distributor, your role set is such that you need higher profit. You need more money to compensate you for a lot of functions. So you are storing, you're bearing the inventory risk. You are sort of, you have a whole place set up. You're running a company. Whereas as an agent, you are just connecting the two. So your costs are much lower. You're not really, you're not warehousing. You don't have any inventory risk. So therefore, you are able to make a difference. You are able to bring out the differences between the prices. So it has happened, despite these economic differences in the two models, it has happened that customs authorities have come after the pricing, taking the price in the agency setting as a comparison for the price in the distribution setting, and which is clearly wrong. It should not be done. But thankfully, there are precedents available. Courts at the higher level have been more cognizant of the economic differences. They've clearly held that, look, distribution and agency, these are separate models. So you can't compare the pricing of product, in one model with that of the other. You have to appreciate the economic differences. So this is just one scenario where we've had dual pricing, agency versus distribution. Then this is actually a decided case by Delhi Tribunal for a liquor company, Beam Global Spirits and Wine. So again, this was a case where pricing came in question. And very interestingly, the company had two segments, bottled in India Scotch BIS segment and Indian-made foreign liquor segments. And in both, they were doing a significant value add at India level. So in one, they are processing the Scotch which they obtain from overseas, the raw material. And in the other, the IMFL segment, as you all would know much better. So they were actually manufacturing using extra neutral alcohol which was procured locally. Now the challenge for them before the tax authority was, when it came to testing their pricing, the tax authority said, we are going to consider both your segments on an aggregated basis. We are going to combine that and see the net profit and see how it weighs against the net profit of the other players in the industry. Whereas the company was saying that, no, look, these are two different segments. You can't combine. If you really need to test their transfer pricing, then you need to segment. You need to carve out a segment, take both of them separately, because the dynamics of these two segments is different. So ultimately, at the tribunal level, logic prevailed, and the tribunal did appreciate that, look, in one case, they are importing from overseas compound alcohol preparations. In the other case, they are sourcing locally. So there is a different economics behind these two segments, and therefore you can't compare the profitability of the two on an aggregated basis. You have to segment the two and then compare with whatever industry comparables that you are taking. And also the tribunal noted that then you should also have comparables which are of the same category. So, for the BIS segment, you need other similar players who are also importing from overseas, have a similar supply chain. And similarly, for the IMFL segment, you should have similar. So the upshot of these slides which I put together was that, yes, we are, as a liquor player, I would be worried on the customs front, on the tax front, especially when I see news being splashed that XYZ was served a demand notice. There is a tax department is very aggressive. But bottom line is that if I have an economic case on my particular pricing, whether be it on the import side or on the sale side, then there is room in law that you can justify it. What you need to do is you need to plan and you need to document your reasoning properly and move in a cautious manner. That's all. It can be taken care of. There's a cost of litigation at the lower level, especially tax authorities. Even if you win the case at the high level, there are some deposits to be made. So yes, I wouldn't say that it's completely painless. There is a monetary pain attached to it, but still, you minimize that monetary pain by being proactive, by planning in advance. So that is just the simple message I wanted to deliver for the audience. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so thank you for that very interesting discussion. So what we'll do is we'll go back to the format which I was talking about. If you have some closing comments on this, we can start with you.
I just had one thought,
Yeah.
which was, so we've also dealt a lot with startup, taxation. And people may be aware that in India recently, there was something called angel tax. So, whenever a startup is set up and the startup goes to raise money, so again, department was coming after them saying that we are going to tax the share premium money that you're getting as income. So that was a lot of harassment. And Pradeep ji just made a point about startups facing challenges, especially in the liquor, because the policy is uncertain. So I just want to know, in such a scenario, very uncertain policy, I mean, I'm a startup, I'm cash-strapped in any case, how do I cope up with, what would be your advice to a startup? I mean, if they plan for a particular policy and the policy changes, they don't have the financial wherewithal now to completely overhaul or rehaul their system. So how do they go about it? I was just curious, like what would be your advice be for startups? Should they stay away from those states which you feel are particularly problematic, and just go and, Goa is safer, go there and operate? I was interested in just knowing your practical insights here.
Sure. I mean, my simple suggestion for startups, and it is, I've been in the startup space now in the alcoholic beverages, have experienced it as an entrepreneur, is that it's really tough, right? So Goa, which used to be a state which was relatively easier, 15 rupees per bottle, prices have increased on beer in Goa. Ashwin will confirm that. Yeah. So I don't think there's any single state that you can really focus on. If you say, okay, as a startup, I'm going to start with one state, right? And then look at what happens. You put all your eggs in one basket, right? And suddenly the policy changes in that state and you become zero. Yeah. So unfortunately for startups, and I'm seeing it in the craft beer space particularly, I mean, almost all the craft beer brands which came in with so much of enthusiasm about 10 years ago, there were, almost about 100 craft beer brands in the Indian market. Yeah, I was running a cafe called the Beer Cafe and the Pint Room, and we were serving over 100 brands of beers here. Today, if I look at in Delhi market, I mean, the very few brands that can be served in outlets like this. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, so for a startup getting into this industry, I would personally be, and it's disappointing that a guy like me who's been so positive is now so negative about this industry. And I would be extremely cautious and wary about putting in money into this industry in India. Outside of India, I would look at it differently. Yeah. That's an honest answer. So, I mean, I just said, so just going back to Bikram's points on the closing comments. So, yeah, so the industry is tough. It's over-regulated, right? The governments of this country should not be in the business of business, right? They should not be in the business of business. As far as alcohol is concerned, what are the two things that the government should be interested in? One is revenue, to ensure there is no revenue leakage, right? So keep it simple. And the second thing is to ensure that things happen in moderation. You don't have drunk people on the streets. And I think that's really where all of us as an industry, whether we are beer, whether we are spirits, whether we are wine, whether we are retailers, whether we are manufacturers of, ENA or wholesalers or bars and restaurants, all of us are affected. I was running bars and restaurants, right? Now imagine a place like Delhi where suddenly you have no alcohol here. What happens to your bar and restaurant? Are you getting a refund on your rentals? No. Are you getting a refund on your license fees? No. Something in alcohol affects my restaurant business, right? So I think it's important that all of us together as one body I know, the IT industry has been able to do that. Can we as one body come together and start talking to governments and say, first and foremost, one country, one tax. Second, remain in the area that you should be, which is ensure policies are set, they're simple, people are complying, and then there is no nonsense happening on the street. If we can achieve that, that'll be a great thing. So that would be my last comments here.
Appreciate those comments.
Hello. So every year we're adding about 40 million people in the legal drinking age in India. That is, 4 crore people are getting 21 every year. So that's a huge chunk of people entering the legal drinking age, and assuming bare minimum, each one has 180 ml a month. Sorry, 1 full bottle a month. That's 180 ml a week. That should add on to about an extra 40 million cases to our all India kitty. But
it's 11 million, not 40.
Sorry?
It's 11 million, not
That's,
40. We are adding around 11 million.
We are adding only 11 million. So technically there's no volume growth. Like, there's a degrowth if you see. Because in the last 3 years, we have added 12 crore people in legal drinking age. But then from 350, we are at 365.
Sorry, I didn't get you.
From 350 million, we are 370 now.
370, 375.
So there's been no volume gain, so to speak. It's just that, this is just possibly a momentary secondary sale that should have happened. But I can't foresee a volume gain in this entire scenario, because we are a growing nation. It's not like our population is not growing, and we are more open today than we were possibly even in 2000. Like, drinking is more open, so technically there's no volume gain according to me. So I think that we'll have to look at it a little more, a more cleaner perspective to check where we are going wrong. I mean, the big companies can do that and guide us.
I believe that if the liquor industry has to grow, they have to join hands together. They have to set up their own panels, make committees. They should meet the top central government people, find out the way out, how this liquor industry is giving a lot of money to the government, by the state government or the central government, by buying materials, by giving central government, or by selling it to state government. The huge funds is being earned by the central government as well as state governments. There should be come out some method whereby the pricing or your excise policies, they should not vary time to time, that every time your brand to be registered again. I think we have to form some committee that issue, join all hands together and meet the top people. Only then you can come out. Individually going to one place, other place, or you're going to the minister, local state minister, they don't listen at all. Commission not happen. It has to come through a central body where we should do something for the liquor industry, because liquor industry is not doing well at all in India. It has a lot of potential. We are competing with our international brands. We are doing now better than international brands. Why should not we stand properly when they people are enjoying their own countries? We are not. I think we have to find some way out for that issue.
So just my comments, not as a moderator but as a panelist, would be that the industry is growing, it's doing well, people are premiumizing. That's something which quite a few of the Indian companies are participating in and need to participate further. We have to build consumers and move where consumers are moving. So that's something which we need to do. And it's an industry growing at almost 8% on a large base. Beer has bounced back. Spirits has bounced back. There's a lot of interesting stuff happening. There's innovation in terms of low alcohol produce. There's innovation in terms of flavors. There's innovation in terms of craft beer. There's innovation in terms of craft spirits. There's innovation in terms of how we market ourselves. with the wild digital world and space opening up. So there's a lot going for us. And the biggest problem is consistency. We have inconsistent regulation. And we do not have the ability in many places to pass on the prices. As an industry, I know SY, CIBC, and other state bodies are working very hard with governments, even at the topmost level, even at the central ministry, to bring about a change. And it's not that all officers don't listen to you. They listen keenly to what you're saying. They have their compulsions, but I've had discussions with many officers who actually listened to us, who's made the change. Maybe the change is slow, but there's a method to the madness. A situation like Delhi is exceptional and completely uncalled for. A situation like Andhra Pradesh was extremely uncalled for. A situation in some other states are uncalled for. And those bring a lot of disappointment to the industry. We also need to pass on costs to consumers wherever we are able to pass on costs while looking at cost efficiencies. So those are my closing comments as a panelist, and you've heard everyone in terms of what they've had to say. Each of them are experts in the industry. We have two stalwarts in Pradeep, Gidwani, and Satpalji. So you've heard them. And do we take questions, or that's the end of the session? Bashanji, Sharanji, is there a Q&A to this? There is a Q&A? Okay. Or we can actually have some people from the audience here, like Mr. Devan, Mr. Suresh Menon, Mr. Shovan Roy. I see a lot of them who know about the topic more than quite a few of us. So if they can add to the discussion, it will be great. So so that's something which is there.
I don't have a question, but I can only comment that, of course, the industry is very regulated. But some of the decisions which the bureaucracy takes are really, really debatable.
Which is true, completely true.
And Delhi is a prime example of that. You have stocks from previous policies carried over, and the department has not given them permission to sell those stocks. I mean, this is the height of things.
It is. These are very unfortunate things, and I know how many times we have represented.
I know.
I know how many times it's fallen on deaf ears. But these are things which really is sad for the industry, and that's why I see a lot of angst amongst people. And you heard him speak, you heard Pradeep speak about being almost an evangelist. Pradeep Gidwani has been an evangelist in this field, telling startups what to do, how to start up, including his entrepreneur successes. And today, that same man is saying, I'm negative. He's not even saying I'm sitting on the wall on that. So obviously there are individual and collective things which have gone so badly for us as an industry. And we really need to, like the Delhi stock situation, we really need to work on those things. And I hope we see some light at the end of the tunnel.
And unfortunately, this is not an isolated case. It happens all over the country in different states. You have a particular excise duty at a moment, you just raise it by more than 25%, 30% in one go, and the sales just drop. And there's no reason to this.
And this frequent change, I don't think we've used the term route to market, but these frequent changes of route to market, like what Delhi did, what Jharkhand has done, what AP has done, that just sucks out the whole business model which you're working on. So those examples are there. Any of you would want to speak, Mr. Roy or IPSM or, sorry, Suresh?
Well, I think in a post-GST world, the pressures in the industry have increased substantially. with revenues from alcohol being either number one or number two of the state's own tax revenues, there is so much pressure on the bureaucrat or the politician in question to deliver the revenues for other expenses that they commit. COVID has been a prime example of that. As expenses on account of medical facilities increased, you ended up with enhanced taxes on alcohol because that was really the only source that you could do, that you could take up. Petroleum taxation, of course, could have been an alternate source, but with the central government having done what it has done with respect to excise duty on petroleum, there was really no scope. So that has been a big pressure. I think as a result, every bureaucrat or politician in question who heads the excise business, the department, he is looking at his 2-3-year-old tenure that he is going to be in play, and therefore he doesn't want anything happening then which kind of creates a problem for him, for his career. So therefore you end up with knee-jerk reactions. West Bengal in 2020 was one prime example, where the taxation went to such levels that it was unthinkable. And my question to the then Principal Secretary was, this year you will congratulate your Excise Commissioner. What will you do next when Didi asks you for a growth on this revenue? You know, and he had no answer. And sure enough, it was good that they saw logic and reasoning in that and corrected the situation 1 year later. But that's not the case everywhere. I think interstate pricing comparisons are a bane as far as this industry is concerned. You know, you have historical comparisons, you have creeping acquisitions of policy, you have states where you quote for a tender in 2013 and that price continues to be valid till 2022. You know, I mean, these are kind of ridiculous things. They probably would not have existed in any other industry. But I think today the actions being taken by some companies to draw the line and say enough is enough, I cannot afford to supply at these prices, I think is making states rethink this situation. They are realizing that, you know, they have carried on with this game a bit too far, and that today the industry will react. Unfortunately, everyone is not going down that path. If that had happened, probably things would have moved quicker. But at least I think it's a head start, and we need to kind of get the message across that we are in business to make money, and therefore if that money is not being made, we will have to draw the line somewhere.
Okay. Mr. Chaudhry, would you like to say something, or anyone else in the audience after this, please? Just a few words. Yeah.
Thank you, Bikram. Thank you, Suresh, for the inputs you've given with regard to GST. See, I've seen this industry now over 50 years, and the issues that we are discussing today are the same. The magnitude has only changed. What Pradeep talked about, an industry where they can have free pricing, universal pricing, this is only possible if this industry together fights for one thing, a GST compliant industry with rest of the goods that are there in the country. And today, Amit Shah has said that why should petroleum products be left to the states? So taking a cue from that, it is quite possible if we all collectively start campaigning once again, bring liquor into GST, along with petroleum, maybe a side remark. And we may have to take this fight along with the states for a long time to see this happen. But that persistence should be with the industry together. Do it for 5 years to 10 years, so maybe one day After 10 years, you will have liquor in GST. Apart from that, there is no way you can get away from this muck that we are in. State by state, unit by unit, every area is having a differential pricing, taxation, and there's a limit to the amount of juice that can be sucked out of the system. And that is what Pradeep has said, Suresh said, that some industry, some industrial players are putting a stop to this thing, but they are not united. So the only way out is to have a one tax structure in the country through GST and see that it is implemented, but it will take a long time.
That's a very interesting point.
We were both in that sphere, fighting for GST, liquor in GST. I think the first time we made I think I wasn't there, but he was there in the team, which got liquor into GST. But there was a change of government and the whole thing got reversed in the second stage. But having made that point, if the center is supporting a uniform GST right now for petroleum products, it is very easy for them to also say liquor. So I leave you all with that thought, and hopefully in the next 5, 7, 10 years, liquor will be in GST, and all that we are talking right now would be a thing of the past.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Anybody in the audience for a quick word or a question or something like that? Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kriti, and I'm a sommelier, and I come from an academia college. My question is actually for the entire panelist, and maybe if somebody in the audience could answer that too. As somebody who's a consumer or somebody who's in the industry of alcohol, if I were to think about, maybe I think about, having my own brand or one of the liquors, I aspire to have my own company and probably start a liquor brand. With whatever's happened with Delhi recently, overnight, the policy changing, people making their brand new shops, registration, making these beautiful shops which are accessible to layman, and especially like women. Now the times are changing when women can go to the shops to it, like how we see in Haryana. What is your point of view? How a person like me is now super scared to even think of probably starting a brand and, investing all the hard-earned money that I have in a brand, and then suddenly one day I get, you know what, Delhi shut shops. You have to go to Haryana, and then I invest a lot more to invest in Haryana registration and this and that. Why Delhi being the capital center government, why suddenly this is happening? Overnight we shut shops. What are we doing as an industry? Shouldn't we be doing something for Delhi or for entire India? And adding to what Sir just said, that state law, city law, Haryana, one place, one bottle is costing 1,000 rupees, the other place is costing 3,000 rupees. How can we have some form of uniformity in this subject, considering it is one of the most important subjects now in our country?
So there were two questions actually, and I guess the other panelists can speak on them if they choose to. My answer would be Delhi hopefully will be the only state in the country to have two formal governments of different parties. It's unfortunate that external matters have crept into the industry. I'm not getting into right or wrong. I'm getting into what has finally hurt us so badly. And I don't think one example of Delhi should take away a dream of yours to start your own brand. Okay, so that's something which is there. It's an anomaly which hasn't really happened in the past, and hope it doesn't repeat in the future.
I don't think they will repeat anything. No.
So,
it's just a political has happened.
So
what has happened in Delhi will never repeat anywhere else. Nothing will happen. I don't think so. It will never happen.
So can I just add to that, right? So I've pretty much been in the startup space for a long time. I work with a lot of startups in the food and beverage and the drink space here. While I'd like to remain as positive as I can be, but it is difficult, right? So it's not just Delhi, which is one state. So imagine now, let's say, for example, there's a whole host of new gin brands that have come in, or spice rums that have come in, or craft beers that have come in. I think in every state you have different policy changes, policy issues. So it is a business which is tough and controlled there. So before you jump into it and you get, or anybody jumps into it and gets carried away by all the, all the glamour that's associated with our industry, all the sex that's associated with our industry. We're a very cool industry, happening industry. Bikram talked about all the nice things that we do, events and social media and fancy events. But one has to get into detail and look at what you'd like to do and be prepared to be in it for the long haul there, right? So it is a long haul game. It is not an easy one. It's a tough business. So if you're prepared for that, then get into it with a clear plan and be focused there. I think that's the only way forward there.
Since the industry has a lot of forward and backward linkages, and there are a lot of suppliers on the periphery. So as I just moved in to this place, there's this brand here with us, Marim Bula, right? So they don't really use alcohol, but they only supply mixes, flavors, So as a startup, someone who wants to be a part of this industry but still not be impacted by the regulation around alcohol, maybe the answer is get into one of the forward-backward linkages or in the periphery where you have less of regulation impacting you and make a brand there, So you...
That's an interesting point. That's a very interesting point, yeah.
Yeah, because then you are covered by GST, okay? You don't have these interstate taxes, all of that. So, I mean, that's just a thought that for anyone wanting to be a part of this industry, be a part of the glamour, but still not be impacted by alcohol. I mean, just a practical thought coming from a consultant who looks for ways to go about things. That's all.
And you see the cocktail mixer market growing. You see a lot of adjacent categories growing. So there are categories which will keep in, space of passion of what you do, but not get you into the spirit regulation.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rajneesh Singh. Well, of course, I heard some of the panelists also asking a lot of questions about government's business in terms of interfering with the pricing and so forth. One of the prime reasons, of course, Suresh did capture, it is the revenue part that, all the state governments, the excise commissioners need to really tackle. I would like to put some legal perspective into it. If at all you look at it historically, because of the constitution and the honorable courts in India, they had, put alcoholic beverage as not being part of the fundamental right to conduct business. So which means that, it falls under the category called res extra commercium. Now, having said that, since we do not have a fundamental right to conduct business within this sphere or within this industry, the limitations that is being imposed as part of the regulatory aspect from the state excise departments becomes humongous, almost to all the companies. Now, what is the way forward? I mean, I had been part of the industry for almost close to 8-10 years, and together with ISWAI, we tried to do a lot of corporate affairs activities in terms of meeting all the state government, central government to push it through. But somewhere, we feel that, there is no successful outcome in the offing. So, possibly now is the time that, the industry should get together, not in terms of the pricing collusion, but of course, to try and challenge the state government's privileges, which at one point of time, the Supreme Court had categorically mentioned that the license fee which is being charged is a kind of privilege which is granted to the companies to operate in the market. Now, why isn't the industry considering to put up a kind of challenge before the courts in India to try and say, let the state government's intervention or the regulatory aspect remain until that privilege which is being charged in the form of license fee. Now, let the companies have their own say in terms of deciding their own pricing course. And there could be merits in these because today, even if you look at the courts, the way that they are receptive towards the changed situation, the changed dimension of conducting business in India, it is really, quite a transformational shift, at least to my mind. So possibly that could be one consideration, and that is also on the grounds that I'm talking about, that almost 3-4 years back, ISWAI did pull up a couple of state governments to the Competition Commission of India. If you want to know more, you can contact ISWAI about it as to what exactly was the outcome. But yes, it was a kind of success, though part, but yes, it will continue going on. So these are the success stories which one should consider as an industry to try and see that what other options are there to be taken forward.
Good to hear from you,
I certainly
Rajneesh,
agree
on
with
this.
you. This is the one best chance that change, every government wants a change, central government wants change. Why can't we join together, put a page to Supreme Court, that why this pricing has to be controlled by them? Let them control anything. Why the pricing is controlled by them? It can happen. Happen.
Yeah, hi everyone. Good morning, good afternoon to all of you. So everything I understand is about turnover, about marketing. Every single product what we make is all about consumption, and our only aim is to ensure that people consume. So how do we bring the brand to the public? That's the basic thing. How do we increase our productivity? How do we get more profit? Now I'll tell you my experience. There's a mall called Star City Mall in Mayuria Phase 1, which is probably the mecca of drinks in NCR. And I don't think any other mall has so many outlets where you can, you lose count of number of drinks outlet over there. Every time I go there, I discover a new brand altogether, which I have not seen before. Now, what intrigues me is, unless until I would have gone there, I won't have known there's a brand existing. So there lacks the thing what I'm trying to bring to all of the industry veterans here. I feel perhaps what is lacking is the visibility of the product of each of you manufacturers to the larger mass. And that is one thing, I think that is the way we can push the sales more. Second thing is that having a unified front of all the manufacturers together, have a very strong lobby which can take up the concern of the manufacturer to the industry, to the government at regular intervals. That's very important. Without a consistent effort, it won't be achieved, because with such kind of hush noise within the small gathering won't make much of a difference. Though I think it's been making a very good, in recent past, people are taking noise of that, and we are seeing so many people are coming up, but I still feel 2-3 things are very important, which is more aggressive visibility for the public, so that, like I think now there was a slogan that time, this roti, kapra or makan. There was a time when, India was struggling from this lower middle class to middle class. Now we have a slogan of roti, kapra, makan or masti. So it's very important that, the generation which you're talking about, I'm not trying to push my son who's now almost in the teens to start drinking now. But yes, once you become an adult, he should have more access to drinks at a much reasonable way. And that's how we all can look ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll call a wrap to this session. Thank you so much, everyone, for being a lovely audience. Thank you.
Well, I would request all of you to please step forward for a group picture, because this is a very memorable moment for all of us. The panel spoke about a lot of things, that the industry is growing at an 8% rate, and the panel also deliberated about the inflation, the regulatory requirements, the over-regulations, and overnight policy changes. So indeed, that was a very, very thought-provoking session. Thank you so much. And ladies and gentlemen, let's give them a huge round of applause for this wonderful discussion. Well, thank you so much. I would request all of you to be seated. And with this, we here break for lunch. This completes the first session, and we now break for lunch. I would request all of you to please join us at 2 o'clock for the next session start. The next session is going to deliberate upon the free trade agreement between India and other countries. So I would request all of you to please enjoy lunch and join us back in this room at 2 p.m. Thank you.
बनता है ऑफिसर, कोई क्लिक से अपने लॉजिक से अपने बनता है ऑफिसर। ग्रूव से अपने हर मूव से अपने बनता है ऑफिसर।
जो स्मूथ वही बनता है ऑफिसर, जैसे हमारी ऑफिस